Okay, let's have a look at quadratic equations. Now, what makes an equation quadratic? Well, it's an equation that has a squared variable. The variable is the letter, and it's usually an x. So when you're solving, make sure to look for two things. First of all, the word solve, so that you know that it's an equation. But secondly, that's squared. When you see that squared, you know, okay, this is a quadratic equation. So then how do you solve a quadratic equation? Well, the very first thing would be to make the equation equal to 0. Unlike linear equations that you're used to where you put the x's on one side and the numbers on the other, these ones you make equal to 0. So make sure to take note of that. The second thing is you ask, can I factorize? Either yes or no. Now if you can factorize, let's have a look at an example. This one, x squared plus x minus 12 equals 0. That's a trinomial, so you would do trinomial factorizing, which may need some brushing up because we all know trinomials can be tricky. From there, we're going to get the answers x equals 3 or x equals negative 4. How did we get those answers? Well, we asked what value of x would make that bracket 0, and that tells us the answer. But how does that work? Why does that work? Well, if you have two numbers multiplied together and you get a 0 answer, then you know one of those numbers has to be a 0. That's the only way that you can get a 0 answer. And so when you've got the brackets times together, you know one of the brackets would equal 0, so you make both of them. Please bear in mind you can also do highest common factor factorizing, like in this example, and in that case, one of your answers will be x is equal to 0 because you only got the one bracket, okay? Now, what happens if you can't factorize? Well, then you use this quadratic formula. And I'm sure you're familiar with it. You would plug in the a and the b and the c into the spots, the relevant spots. And once you've plugged in those coefficients, you would use your calculator to solve this. The reason you use your calculator is that the answers are irrational and you can't factorize, so you have to use your calculator to solve it. Please be warned, there is a danger here, especially when using your calculator. That b squared value needs to have a bracket, especially if it's negative. It always needs to come out as a positive value. So put a bracket around it when you put it into your calculator, and then you'll never have to worry about that. Okay, so that's us. That's how to solve quadratic equations that can be factorized or can't be factorized. But let's have a quick look at some unusual answers that you might get. You could get 0 equals 0. In that case, any answer is acceptable. If you get two numbers that are not the same, then there's actually no answer that's acceptable. And you could get an error on your calculator, which also means no real solution. Have a look at nature of the roots to understand that better. Okay guys, pause the screen, go back and slow down if you need to. Make sure to remember that you need a squared variable for quadratic equation. Ask yourself, can I factorize? Remember the zero product rule if you can factorize, and the formula if you can't factorize. Also bear in mind the mark allocation, I've shown it there. There is a mark allocated for the actual substitution of the numbers into the formula, so make sure to show that. And then finally, if you do need to, rewrite this in your own handwriting and in your own words, and then that will help you to remember this going forward. And slow the video down if you need. I know I'm speaking very quickly. Thanks.